Good afternoon and welcome to the Survive and Thrive webinar series. My name is Kelly Condon. I am the program coordinator for the Texas Oncology Foundation. Just to give you a little bit of background about our foundation, our mission is to provide support to cancer patients in the communities where they live, work, and receive treatment. These Survive and Thrive programmings, just like this webinar and our symposiums throughout the state, are just one of the ways we are active in communities, providing both resources and support to all involved on the cancer journey. We are so grateful you all chose to join us this afternoon, and we are excited to have Corinne Barnacle leading our discussion on helping children and teens understand cancer. Before we get started and before I intro our speaker a little bit more, I just want to go over a few housekeeping tips and point out a few resources available to you on this webinar presentation. First of all, if you have any questions for our presenter throughout this presentation, you can submit these at any time during the webinar by simply clicking on the box on the right side of your screen under the Questions tab on your control panel. If you're viewing along with others at your site, please designate a scribe to submit your questions for the group. We do plan to respond to all the questions you have at the end of the presentation, so just keep them coming. If you begin to experience any trouble, such as your window disappearing or slides are not advancing, simply closing and reopening the webinar window will usually fix this. If you're having audio issues, the best solution is to call into the webinar and listen over the phone. There's an audio section on your control panel. Select phone call and the access number will come up for you. Our presenter has provided some handouts. You can find these under the Handouts tab on your control panel as well. These are resources that she will reference throughout the presentation, and you are able to view, download, and save these handouts during the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and the online archive will be available for viewing after the live version. The recording will be sent to everyone that registered in a follow-up email and will also be housed on our Texas Oncology website under Survive and Thrive Webinar Archives. Before we get started, I just want to get a feel for who we have on the call with us tonight. So I'm going to launch a poll question, and if you would just respond to it by selecting your answer choice. We want to know, do we have survivors on the call, caregivers, healthcare providers? Awesome. It looks like we have a lot of healthcare providers on the line with us today. That's very exciting. All right, again, I just want to tell Corinne, thank you for being with us tonight. And just to give you a little bit of background about her, she is with Wonders and Worries, which is an organization in the Austin area that provides support for families during a parent's illness. She has been with Wonders and Worries for 10 years now, and she actually started out as a volunteer for the organization and is now a full-time child life specialist. We are excited to hear from you today. So Corinne, thank you for being with us, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And everyone, I'm going to give you a little extra part of me today. I'm going to allow you to see me with my spiffy headset on. Awesome. Okay, great. Well, I'm so happy to be here today to chat with you, about how do we help kids when they have someone in their family with an illness like cancer. And so there's a couple things that I want to be able to chat with you about today. And some of the main points are essentially just having that main conversation with that family and figuring out, how can we create a script that makes sense to help a child or teen understand what's going on in the family. And then essentially, other things that come along with an illness like cancer are surgeries and hospitalizations. So we're going to go through, a couple tidbits on how we can help a child or a teen when they have a parent going through a hospitalization or a surgery, and then essentially, the big deal of treatment and how that affects the family and especially kids and teens when they're in the home. So a little bit of background around Wonders and Worries. We've been around for a while, around 17 years. We've been able to help around 8,000 children and parents in the Austin, Central Texas area, and we have one mission. So we provide free professional support to children and teens through a parent's illness. So this is essentially, what we're here for, just to help, people around the area, healthcare providers like the ones right now who are listening to this. How do we help children and families when they have something like this going on in the family? Oh, there's me, a little bit of background around me. All right, so let's get down to it. So why is support necessary? So there's some research that shows a couple of things that we have found, and that would be, we know that when you have a parent in the home that is sick, children tend to withdraw because it's different and they don't really know what's going on. So they can become anxious. We see some depression sometimes with kids, and essentially sometimes some post-traumatic stress symptoms if things aren't explained to them on their level. Children can misperceive illness and parents' behaviors of them not being loved or valued. And then in the school, kids are supposed to get up, go to school, perform at school all day, come home and do homework. Their brain is supposed to be working, all the time. And sometimes this is really tough when they have something else on their mind, like a sick parent at home. And we know young people who have a parent with cancer are 5 to 6 times more likely to be at risk for mental health issues. So support's needed. That's why this conversation is so important. So all you healthcare providers out there who are listening to this today, if you don't know about Wonders and Worries or how you can get involved with us, so you can essentially email Kim, she's one of our program directors here, or go to our website that's listed. And we have an online referral form and lots of different ways to get families hooked up if they need us. Okay. All right, so helping children and teens understand cancer. So Wonders and Worries, we want to ensure that children and teens can reach their full potential despite a serious illness. And cancer is kind of like a mystery. So it's this term that we use that something's going on, but we don't really have a picture for it or a way for kids to visually understand like what's happening. So how do we explain that? How do we help kids and teens understand all of the things that go along with this illness? So if we think about it, how do you explain that? So a lot of parents come to us and they're wanting language, they're wanting a narrative. How do I tell my child or teen that I've just been diagnosed? I don't know what terms to use. I don't want to scare them. I want to protect them. And so a lot of times parents, they want to protect. They want to not share information about the situation. And, we often don't realize that even though sometimes kiddos and teens aren't told about what's going on, they're little sensors. They understand, body language and feelings at the home. And so a lot of times they catch on to things and they sense something is going on. And it can be an impact. And a lot of times kids are creating fears and other misperceptions in their head when they're seeing side conversations or hearing parents on the phone talking to doctors. And they're picking up on all this language, but no one is talking to them about it. That's why this webinar is so important. So if you are a healthcare provider or you're a caregiver or you know someone who's going through this that has kids and teens in the home, this will be some great information for you to give to them. So how would you describe cancer to a child? So we're going to break it down for you today. Essentially, 4 steps. So the first step that we're going to look at is, let's find out what the kiddo or the teen already knows about cancer. So you can just flat out ask them, what do you think cancer is? Or, what do you know about cancer? And since cancer is becoming more prevalent, these days, a lot of the kids that I see have kids at their school that have the survivor bracelets and all the colors for the different types of cancer. So it's becoming more of a thing that we talk about in our schools and in public and in the community. So asking a kid, what do you know? And a lot of times kids aren't able to verbalize what they know. And so maybe just giving them the option to have some paper and to draw it out. And maybe that can give you an idea of some of the things that they think about it already. And then another good question is, do you know anyone with cancer? They might have overheard, oh, my dog had cancer, or someone's friend at school has a grandma with cancer. And then asking that question, well, do you know if they've lived or died? And just getting an idea from that child what they know before you start feeding them information. So just getting a little bit of background would be really helpful to find out what the kiddo already knows. And so how we explain cancer is we really focus on the human body. So giving kids and teens a visual. So explaining the difference between healthy cells and cancer cells is one of the things that we want to help kids focus on. So a lot of times, when I'm working with families, we talk about healthy cells having a job in the body. So a lot of times I hear parents use the adjective bad cells. And so I would try to work on your language and stay away from bad cells and do more of like healthy or abnormal cells. So make this a conversation. Have that child name, what are some healthy cells in your body? Oh, our hair cells, or our brain cells, or blood cells, and making them kind of be a part of that convo. And even for teenagers, a lot of times when I work with teens, I ask, have you learned about the part of the cell? Because when I was in school, we had to diagram the part of the cell and I hated it. So a lot of times my teens that I work with have had to do that. And so that's a good intro into talking about the cells. We talk about how cancer cells, they don't have a job in the body. There's no purpose or no reason for them to be in our body. And they get in the way of healthy cells and allow them not to do their job. Healthy cells have a natural lifespan. They're new cells when older cells die, like our skin cells, but just, hitting home that cancer cells, they don't die off naturally. And we're going to talk about later in the webinar, the different ways that doctors like to get rid of cancer cells. But essentially, there's a little picture here down by the bottom. And you can even make this at home or have a little kit ready to go if you work with kids and need to have this conversation more often. So you can use materials because kids need visuals. So Legos are a wonderful way to help kids understand about the building blocks of our body because that's our cells. So typically I take the Legos and I have the kid, hold them and they can help me build and I go, okay, these are the building blocks of our body. Just like Legos, our cells build together and they all have a job to do. Or if you don't have Legos, you can just get a piece of paper and cut out some little circles and color them and say, these are healthy cells and these are cancer cells. And then typically what I have kids do is take the cancer cells and put them on top of the healthy cells and kind of crowd them out. And this gives a really good concrete, tangible things for kids to touch. And sometimes that's really helpful for their little brains and how they process information. So on our website, we have some amazing books and resources. So I would definitely, check that out if you are in need for some bibliotherapy. But some of the ones we have on here are Butterfly Kisses and the Hope Tree. And then providing an analogy. So the analogy that we like to use at Wonders and Worries is, in order for doctors to get rid of cancer, we have lots of different treatments. So we talk about how when you have weeds in a garden, there's different ways to get rid of the weeds. We can pull them, we can use weed spray, we can cut them. And just like getting weeds out of a garden, there's different ways that doctors like to try to get cancer cells out of the body. So that's just a really good way to help explain all the different treatments that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Okay, so clarifying misconceptions. One of the biggest things for kids and school-age kids are they have a lot of magical thinking. So magical thinking is when a child believes that, oh, I didn't clean my room, I made mommy or daddy mad, so I must have caused the cancer. So we want to squash that the child has nothing to do with their parent getting cancer. And then you can't catch it. So there's a difference between, simple illnesses like the flu or strep throat, and then a serious illness like cancer. So a lot of times with smaller children, we're really trying to help parents understand and how to create a script that, when you get sick, it's not the same thing as cancer. The flu is contagious, but cancer is, you can't catch it from mom or dad. So you can still hug them, you can still be next to them, and you won't catch their cancer. And every cancer is different and unique to the person. So we talk about how there's over 200 types of different cancers, and that one person's cancer is not the same as the other person's cancer. So even if they have a person that they know whose mom or dad died of cancer or breast cancer or colon cancer, that does not mean that their mom or dad has the same type. So, and there's lots of different treatments in different ways. And then, the big one is a lot of times parents come to us and go, what if my child asks me if I'm going to die? And it's a valid question. That's a real worry. So a lot of times we just talk about how not everyone dies from cancer. Some people do, but most people live. And that's not the plan for a mom or dad right now. So the plan is to continue treatment and going to see doctors. And if the plan changes, we're going to let you know, but that's not the plan. And so also cancer is random. We don't know essentially what causes cancer. So sometimes a lot of kids go, well, why did my mom or dad get cancer? They eat really healthy. I see them exercise. And a lot of teenagers are trying to figure out how the way the world works. And so they're like, well, my mom or dad doesn't deserve this. They take care of their body. And we talk about how genetics can play a factor. Sometimes the environment or behavior can play a role. But honestly, we don't have all the answers and we don't know why certain people get cancer. Okay, so open and ongoing communication. So developing a plan. So treatment can last months, it can last a year, and and teenagers like to have a time frame. So developing that ongoing communication is really helpful. So we use the terminology. We're going to keep you in the loop when things happen, when new scans pop up. How do you want to know about it? How do you want to be updated? Some kids are info seekers and teens, and they really want to know the information. And you're going to have some kids that are like, whatever. I don't really want to know about it, and that's okay too. So really paying attention to those child's needs and understanding what they need. So maybe it's you updating them at the beginning of each week, or once a week you have a check-in or a family update around it. It's really depending on that family. Some concrete or tools that you could give to a family on how to keep kids in the loop. Just going to Michael's and we have what we call a wonders and worries jar. And it's just a clear jar where we have strips of paper and the family can choose where they want to have it in the home. So if a child has a question when a parent isn't home, they can write it on the piece of paper, slip it in the jar, and then that parent knows, oh, there's something in that jar. I probably need to go to that and answer that. You can pass a journal back and forth, and then helping kids identify other trusted adults to talk to, whether that's a school counselor, a neighborhood friend, or a best friend, or a lot of times grandparents typically come in and help out. So just finding ways to keep talking about it and having that open conversation. Okay, general tips. So we encourage families to be open and to be honest. And a lot of times we know parents, like I said, are protective and they don't want to have those conversations. But if family members are talking about it and you're having those conversations, what you're doing is you're giving kids the permission to express their feelings and to talk about it as well. So we want to model those healthy convos for kids and teens. So thinking about a time and place for the conversation, we don't want to have really important conversations with kids when they're tired or they're hungry or they're stressed or before they're about to go to bed. So thinking about that timing is really important. We want to help families use the real words like cancer and chemotherapy and tumor. The child doesn't need to know, or the teen doesn't need to know all the information, like what type of chemo you're doing. If you get the sense that they're flooding, so like pay attention to nonverbals for kids and teens. If they're looking around their room, if they're having a hard time paying attention, then you're probably flooding them and you maybe need to step back and be more simple. So kids process things differently than adults and teens do. They're trying to figure it out. So a lot of times parents get really worried about having this conversation, and the kiddo after goes, well, can I go to my room and play now? And the parent's like, oh my gosh, you don't have any questions? And they're going to go process, and they might come back to you with questions after. And one of the main things that I always want to tell parents, if a child asks a question or a teen that you don't know the answer to, you can reflect and say, wow, I can see you're really thinking about that. And I'm so glad that you asked me, but I don't know the answer to that. But I can write that down. Maybe I can ask my doctor, and I don't know the answer to that. It's okay for adult to be upset because, right, we're modeling those positive, and those negative feelings and how it's okay to express that. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. But if you feel like you're going to flood, make sure you have someone else in the room with you, or someone else that could help that kiddo out or that teen if that parent's having a hard time explaining things. Okay. All right. So we know with cancer that sometimes surgery and hospitalizations come with the territory. And one thing we know about kids and teens is that they're egocentric, right? So they love their routines. They have their soccer practices, their school times, who picks them up from school. It's kind of like a well-oiled machine. And when surgery or hospitalization has to happen, that gets messed up. So I want you to think about the first time you visited a hospital. What did it smell like? What were the sights you saw? What are the sounds? And you want to help families understand developmentally, like what age kiddo they have. If they have small preschool kids or school age kids, we really want to hone in to the 5 senses, because hospitals can be scary. So preparing a parent's hospitalization, like I said, we want to be honest. We want to give age appropriate details. We want to listen to the child's concerns and allow for them to express emotions. Boundaries and routines and rules are important, and then creating a support plan with that child. So one of the handouts that we provided for you is a support plan. And a lot of times I give these and create them for school counselors. So if a parent is having surgery while the child is at school, we want to give them some options. Do you want to know if mom or dad is out of surgery? Do you want the counselor to come grab you and tell you, and give them some choices the day of the surgery, and how really powerful and impactful that can be for a kiddo to have some mastery over that. Okay. So touring the hospital if possible. I know that's not possible for a lot of parents, for the kiddo or the teen to be able to tour, but we have smartphones, and typically we all have them. So a virtual tour may be available, but if not, you can use your phone and you can take pictures and bring them back to the kiddo and show them, kind of what's going on, and showing the hospital environment. So explaining that the parent is in the hospital and how the medical staff is taking care of them. Because once again, preschool, school-age kids, they have that magical thinking, right? So if they don't see what a hospital is like, they can create all these scary things of what a hospital is really like. And we want to give them the right visuals, that people are taking care of mom and dad, that they're not by themselves. If a child is coming to visit, then letting the nurses know, hey, my kiddo's coming or my teen's coming to visit. Can you make sure this doesn't happen while they're here? And if so, do you mind letting me know so I can have my child step out of the room? We always encourage parents and to create something for the child to bring to the parent, and vice versa. So at Wonders and Worries, we do a lot of picture frames and just pictures and fun crafts, pillows. So making a pillowcase and having it for that mom or dad to take to the hospital. So the child feels like they're giving something, and creating something for that parent's hospital room can be really impactful. And then after the hospital visit, maybe think about a fun place to go. Can they go get some yogurt? Can they go for a fun walk in a park? Something to get out that energy after they visit that parent in the hospital. So like I said, preparing through the senses, take pictures, focus on medical equipment from the child's viewpoint. So getting low, explaining what those things are, like this IV pole, what does this do? Well, this helps mom and dad get energy and medicine into our body. You can talk about that the parent probably won't be able to get up and get out of bed, but you can help sit up the bed with the button. And then mom may not be able to talk or to hear you, but you can still talk to mom. I Spy is another really fun, friendly way for a child to be able to do fun things in the hospital room, and then offer choices. So maybe paying attention to that child and seeing, is this too rough for them? Are they having a hard time being in their room? And you can give them a break. Providing guidance and giving the child options for control. So guiding that child, you can sit here, you can sit there. I always encourage parents to take a picture of the parent in the room first and explaining some of the things and maybe where they might want to sit if you have an anxious child that's really nervous about visiting. And you can allow the child to do fun things. Let's find a TV show for mom or dad, or adjust the bed and pushing the nurse's button. So finding different things for them to do around their room. And then encourage a child to ask questions, get to know the staff, ask them, what's their favorite color? What do you do for fun? Writing questions down. That's always really helpful to create that friendship in the hospital that good people are taking care of mom and dad. The picture on the right is one of my clients, and this mom had to do 2 laps around her wing. And so her kids would come and do those 2 laps with her every day. Okay. So a lot of times if a parent is having a major surgery and the first few days they're going to feel out of it. They're not going to feel up to visitors. They're going to be on pain meds. They're going to be loopy, and kids just it's not a feasible thing for them to visit. So you still want to provide that information to those kiddos through pictures. Where are they? What are they doing? Bring something home from the hospital, even as simple as the pen and paper or something from the cafeteria or gift shop. Encourage questions, right? We want to provide opportunities for them to write down and to share with the parent or medical staff. And like I said, reassure that the parent's being cared for, give the child something of the parents to have and to hold. So you're keeping that connection. So that connection is the most important thing. We have a lot of wonderful technology these days. So even if it's just an audio message to that parent or from that child, you can do recorded books if you have time, Skype, FaceTime, utilize the internet, allow children to talk to their parent if they feel like it, if the parent feels up to it, or doing an activity, making a puzzle or a Lego kit together. And then a child can add each day. That's a really good idea. Or something as simple as paper. Paper is a wonderful tool. You can even just do a paper chain with a note or a link, and they can tear one off every day. And it's that way of staying connected to that parent and having that parent create fun things or funny jokes for that kiddo that they can tear off something or a sweet note from that parent. Okay, caregiver suggestions. So identifying someone who the child knows and trusts and allow the child's input when possible. This could be a grandparent, a neighbor, a good family friend. So a lot of times those people have to step in during hospital stays. That's someone else taking them to school and picking them up from school, taking them to soccer. A lot of times routines are really hard, but we really try to keep routines in place for kids and even for teens. Teens care about their routines and they don't want to look different from everybody else. They're trying to gain their independence. And so a lot of times anger and frustration can come out when their routine is interrupted as well. Calendar, great visual. So kids need repetitiveness, especially small kiddos. So if they keep asking, when's mommy or daddy coming home? Having a visual to help count down the days is a really great way for a child to understand and get a better idea of, when mom or dad is coming home. And then plan something for the parent and child to do together after discharge, something to look forward to. Even if it's something that's low energy, it could just be, making chocolate chip cookies and hanging out at the house and watching your favorite movie. So something to hype up that kiddo for when that parent comes home, something they can just really look forward to. Like we said, children can take on things and understand things as long as they're prepared for it. So thinking about when that parent comes home from surgery, what's changed? Are there any physical limitations or abilities? Small kids want to be held and they're rambunctious. And if a mom just had a mastectomy, a kiddo can't climb on mom. So a lot of times we've had, thinking of other ways to give kisses, whether that's an elbow kiss or a toe kiss, but not really touching any sensitive area. A lot of times other people are bringing food into the home. One of the main ideas we give parents is if your energy is low but you need people to cook for you and you have a care calendar, leave an ice chest on your porch and just say, we love you so much, but we don't really have the energy to hang out with you, but please leave the meal on the porch in the ice chest, and thank you so much. Provide age-appropriate opportunities for that child to help. So we don't want that child to be taking care of that parent, but there's simple things that they could do, give a massage on their feet or bring a cup of water. There's simple things that they can do to help that's not taking over control, especially for teenagers. A lot of times they might want to stay home and help with that sick parent. And we talk about how, there's someone here to take care of mom and dad. I know you're worried about it, but we're good to go. Your job is to go to school, and we've got it here. And then identify things a child can do with the parent, whether that's bedside play, so bringing an activity to that parent, and like I said, fall on movies, fall on things that are low energy, or a puzzle, so that child can still stay connected to that parent, even though they might need to recuperate. All right, so modifying the home environment. Provide a place for that child to escape. So if a parent comes home and it's going to be the bedroom, the mom or dad's bedroom where they're going to be, that's pretty simple. The child can come in and out as they please. But if sometimes parents' bedrooms are upstairs, and I know sometimes they have to come downstairs and set up a bed downstairs in front of everybody, and that might be a little bit tougher. So making sure that child has a place to go if the things around them are getting too stressful. A lot of times parents ask us, well, do I let them see my scars? Do I let them see? And we say, hey, if you're comfortable with it and your child is curious, then what's the harm? And you can take it as easy as you want it, and it's comfortable. You can just use photos, you can do drawings, you can grab a stuffed animal and help a child understand and provide opportunities through medical play. Kids can understand and they want to know the information, and there's simple and age-appropriate ways for them to know if they're interested, because they're really curious about bandages and drains. Not every kiddo is, but sometimes they are. And then share information about expected recovery time. That might be unpredictable. We might not know that information, but say, hey, I hope to be able to drive you to school in 2 weeks. Like, that's our plan. Or I hope to be able to give you a really big hug in about 3 weeks, but we're not sure. But, trying to give them a little bit of estimation of time. All right. So cancer treatments and side effects. So a lot of times when we tell children or teens that their parent has cancer, if they don't look sick, there's not a lot of worry. But essentially, when a parent starts having physical symptoms or side effects and looks sick, this is when we see kids struggling more and having more worries. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that kids might think about. Why does your hair fall out? Why are you so tired in bed all the time? Why are you nauseous and throwing up? Why are you eating differently? Why do I get to eat this over here, but you have to eat this protein shake and can't eat my food? And why do I have to wash my hands so much and keep everything clean? I know that's a big frustration for small kids that hate washing their hands and don't understand. So a tip that I gave to one mom yesterday is, it's not fun to wash your hands, but maybe you can go to H-E-B and let them each pick out their own favorite fun soap, and they can have that soap at their bathroom, and that gives them some choice over washing their hands. All right, so as we use that analogy prior with the weeds, so there's weeds in a garden, we have different ways to get rid of them. We pull them, we cut them, the same thing. So we're talking about, how do we get rid of cancer? There's lots of different ways. So some oncologists might choose one of these treatments, or they might choose all three. But remember, everybody is different. And so we like to explain the job of chemotherapy. It destroys the cancer cells. It's really strong, and its job is to destroy the cancer cells. But sometimes the chemo, that strong medicine, doesn't know the difference between healthy cells and harms those as well. And this is why we start to get side effects. So it doesn't know the difference. It gets a little confused. And so we start thinking about and helping kids understand, where do we have really fast growing cells in our body, and where does the chemo destroy them? We talk about what grows fast on our body. And I help kids think about, okay, what do you think grows fast? And I point to my head, they're like, their hair. So we talk about hair cells grow fast, blood cells, and the digestive tract cells in your tummy. And so this is why sometimes our hair falls out, but it's a good thing because it means the chemo is working and it's doing its job. And then describe ways chemotherapy can be given. So obviously, you're not going to have a portacath doll at home. You might have one in your office if you work with child life, but this is a really great way for kids to understand what a port is if a parent is getting access to a portacath. Or you can have pictures of the infusion room. So have that parent take a picture of the IV and different things and show that kiddo, like, this is the chair that I sit in, and this is how long it takes for me to get it. I have to sit there for 4 to 5 hours with a lot of different people, and I have this comfy chair and I'm hooked up to this pole so I can go to the bathroom. Or sometimes people might take a pill, and so they don't have a lot of the side effects. But essentially, you want to cater to whatever that family needs and trying to figure out what type of side effect that parent will have with that chemo. All right, this is probably my favorite hands-on activity that you will need some supplies for, but it's really helpful for visuals for kids and for teens. So it kind of helps us understand, okay, if I explain this to a kid or teen, are they really understanding what's going on with side effects? So we talk about blood soup. You'll need a Ziploc bag and all these ingredients right here. And so we talk about how the chemo doesn't know the difference between the cancer cells and our healthy cells, and it attacks our blood cells. So we go over what are our different types of blood cells. We have white blood cells, and I call these like the little armies. So they fight off infection and they destroy germs. Those are your marshmallows. Your red cells, they carry oxygen and give you energy. So if mom or dad is sleeping a lot, maybe their red blood cells are low. Platelets, we talk about how they help clot your blood and help you heal, and that's the white rice. And then we have plasma, which is just like corn syrup, and that's what all the blood cells transport in. And so this is a really concrete way to help a child understand if a parent has low blood cell counts of any kind, and we allow them to make their own parents' blood soup. Okay, so is your mom in bed a lot right now? Okay, do you think she has any red blood cells in her body, or do you think they're kind of low? And then we talk about the white cells. So a lot of times immune systems are down and it's flu season. So I know the washing of hands is coming into effect for a lot of families and trying to stay away from germs. And so we talk about the white cells a lot, white blood cells a lot, because we talk about having a germ-free home and creating that narrative for kids that when they come in the home, what's the first thing they need to do before they go give mom or dad a hug? We gotta wash our hands. We just can't have a lot of germs because their immune system is down. So it's a great activity. Try it, and it's really fun sensory-wise. It helps calm me down. Like a little stress ball. It's really fun to play around with. And then after a couple hours, I would chunk it because the red hots start to seep in and make everything pink. All right, hair loss. So this is probably one of the most difficult side effects for kids to cope with because it's really different and really scary. So it's important to balance the parent's comfort and the child's wishes with hair loss. So I help parents understand. We kind of ask questions, if a parent's going to lose their hair and it's, a mom that typically has long hair, we talk about, what do you want? If you come to pick me up at school, do you want me to wear a scarf or a wig or a hat? And giving them some choices. So these are my clients once again, and the mom made it to be like a fun activity. They went to the wig store and they bought fun wigs, and everyone had a wig. You can try to make it fun. You want to reassure those kids that hair will come back. This is just a temporary thing, and it could come back different. It might be a different texture. And there's lots of ways for involving kids. It depends on the family and their personality, but you can have a head shaving party. It can be done private. You can do it at your home. This gives a child an option to be a part of it, and it gives them some mastery over the situation and not to make it so scary. Or another good idea is to allow the child to cut a doll's or a stuffed animal's hair. So including the child in the selection of the wig is also another really good way to include that kiddo or that teen. I've had some teens pick out really fun, like hot pink wigs for their moms. And it's just a fun thing for them to do together to stay connected at a time that's really scary. Okay. Radiation. So describing radiation is a little tough, but we like to stick with the words as it's special. It's an invisible light that's targeted to destroy cancer cells. So it's not a laser beam that's like coming through you with a red light. This little girl has a little Lego radiation machine, and we talk a lot about how, radiation is a little bit different than chemo because it doesn't take as long as chemo. That person's job is to lie down really still. It doesn't really hurt or take that long, but it usually takes every day for about 6 weeks and a set number of treatments. And this can sometimes get a little frustration with kids if parents are having to do it in the summer and it impacts their summer plans. Oh, we couldn't go to the beach because mom had to get her radiation and couldn't miss it. So we really want to just help kids understand that the parent's job is to lie really still. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't take that long, and its job is to destroy the cancer cells with an invisible light. Side effects for radiation are a little bit different than chemo. So tired, exhaustion, we use the word cranky. A lot of times kids use the adjective grumpy. So I get a lot of kids that come in and go, my parent's so grumpy. And we talk about, well, they have a good reason to be. There's a lot of stuff going on in their body. Sometimes red irritation and burning skin wherever the radiation is going. Sun sensitivity, so being out in the sun's a little bit tough. And then other side effects based on the treatment site, depending on where they're getting their radiation. Okay. So common changes that families experience, parent not being able to play with that kid or that teen or go do stuff with them like they used to because they can't be around crowds because your immune system is down, or they don't have the energy to get on the floor, their bones hurt, and it's just hard to get on the floor and play with their child. So that's a big change, and it's a tough one for kids to get used to. Ongoing changes in routine and care. So it's one of those unpredictable routines. We talk a lot about how we have to really work hard to be flexible and how cancer makes you flexible because you have to go with the flow depending on when your doctor's appointments are, or when, kiddos have different routines and different things they have to get to. Someone else might have to pick them up that day, and just helping that child prepare for that. Okay, well, Grammy's going to come get you today. But tomorrow, remember, Susie Q's going to come get you, and helping repeat that for kids that are smaller. And that can help them be more prepared for all the different caregiver changes. Home environment, it might not be as quiet. You might have people coming in and out more often, or kids have to be quiet, and that's really hard. Sometimes they have to talk a lot about, when mom or dad takes a nap, we have to be really quiet. And there's lots of different things that we can do to help kids and teens understand when the house has to be at a lower volume. Finances, cancer is expensive. So a lot of times that impacts families. Kids can't go do all their extracurricular stuff, and teens can't go to the movies with their friends and have that extra money that they're used to having. So sometimes that's a big change. And then roles in the family change, especially with older kids that sometimes have to take on more responsibility at home. So siblings that are older that might have to pick up their little sibling from band camp, or take care of them more when a parent isn't doing well, even if you have a single parent in the home and the teen is having help out with the smaller sibling. So those are some of the main changes that families can experience that we want to be aware of. And part of Wonders and Worries, and part of our job is, we want to help kids cope. This is a really tough situation, but if they're prepared and they're given some of the right tools, they can handle it, and kids are extremely resilient. So giving the child choices or jobs, so allowing them to have different roles in the home that gives them a job can be helpful. Like they're having a purpose and they're being helpful. Sometimes kids really need that and want that and crave it. This is a really fun idea. You can put together a treatment day box with quiet activities. So things that kids can go to whenever mom or dad isn't feeling good that day. That's not just a video game, but an activity that, mandala coloring or fun coloring books or stickers or any activity that you can find. I love the Target $1 bins. They have some really great activities for kids that are really, really, really cheap. Establishing structure and routines. So we know it's hard, but trying the best to keep kids on their routines and creating a structure is really important, because all the unknowns that are coming at them, sometimes it's really hard for kids to be flexible. And validate and reflect feelings. This is a big one, guys. We want to always reflect and validate the feeling. A lot of times parents want to go into fixer mode. So if a child is having a hard time, we ask, what's wrong? What happened today? How can I fix it? And sometimes they might just really need you to listen and go, wow, that was really tough today. It sounds like it was really stressful. I can see you're feeling really sad about mom today. I am too. So making sure you're giving parents the tools to have reflection and support different coping styles. So some kids might want to have the defense mechanism of just not talking about it, and that's okay. But essentially, we want to respect if that teenager needs to go out and be with friends and they're not spending as much time at home and you're okay with that, and they need to go hang out with friends because their friends and their peer relationship is the way that they're coping with everything. So we need to respect their coping styles. So we're going to wrap it up, but this is ongoing support for kids. So keep the school and other support systems involved throughout your treatment. I always tell parents to call the school counselor to say, hey, this is what's going on, because teachers and counselors see those kids 8 hours a day. So they need to know what's going on and be kept in a loop. Utilize professional support like Wonders and Worries. We have a wonderful website that has a lot of good tools and support on it. I would encourage you to go to our website and look at it and feed through it. We have all of our resources of all of our books on there. One of the tip sheets that's included on this webinar today is fantastic. So even if you needed just to give that to a parent that has a child or a teen at home, it's a wonderful script to keep in your back pocket. And then to recognize that support needs can change over time. So a child might be doing really great through treatment, and then mom or dad is doing better and they're in remission, and that's when fears and worries pop up. So recognizing that it's not just a temporary support, but that it could be longevity and needs to be over a longer period of time, no matter what time during the illness. All right, sweet, I finished on time.
Thank you so much, Corinne. This was so really great to hear. I personally really liked the garden analogy. I think that is such a clear visual way to explain to kids. I really liked that part.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to take a few minutes and answer questions that came in throughout the presentation. If you thought of any while Corinne was presenting, please feel free, use that question tab and send them to us while she answers the few that we do have. All right, so when you were talking about bringing the child in for a visit when the parent is hospitalized or just had surgery, do you think it's a good idea, or would you suggest the kids joining in on just a doctor visit or a treatment visit or something like that?
Yeah, so just like a medical space in general. So
okay.
Kids are curious, and we want to give them and paint that picture of like where that parent is going. So if a parent goes, oh, I'm going to go get scans today, or oh, I'm going to go see my doctor today, if it's appropriate for that child to come, then great. There's a lot of Texas Oncology nurses that are wonderful, and people that are like, come on in, come see the space, come see the exam room. But then I would just caution, if there's any important information that's being shared from the doctor to that parent, then maybe just caution around that. But seeing the space, I think, is completely appropriate if that child is really curious about what it looks like.
Okay, awesome. Early on in the presentation, you were talking about just good language to use around describing, good cells versus cancer cells and all of that. But you said not to use the phrasing bad cells. So we were asked, can you just elaborate on that? That feels like an easy way to describe the abnormal cells that they are having. So can you just elaborate on that a little bit more and what language you would replace it with?
Sure. So we try to stay away from the adjective bad, like good and bad, because a lot of times children hear that word a lot, in school and in behaviors. Oh, that was bad. And so essentially a lot of times we like to use just the words healthy or unhealthy or, normal or abnormal. And that gives a better language for kids instead of using the good and bad. So if that helps you any, but just the
Mhm.
healthy and unhealthy cells, like cancer cells are unhealthy and they attack our healthy ones. We want them to go
Mhm.
away. But we typically try to refrain from saying the bad cells.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
seems a little bit more just like descriptive, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Mhm.
And then do you have any suggestions? What if mom and dad are not on the same page about how to discuss this with their child? How do parents navigate that?
That's a really good question. So obviously, my role is to help parents, be a united front. So
Mhm.
using the same language, and I even ask parents, okay, so if you're going to be describing this and then you're describing it this way, it's confusing for kids if they're not getting the same language. And so I would just maybe, if you're a healthcare provider and you're trying to, encourage or recommend, hey, this is what you should be doing, go back to research and say, I can see you're really hesitant and that maybe you don't want to share that, or maybe you're too afraid, but kids are resilient and they thrive off of information that's given age appropriate. And it would be really helpful if you would be able to share this and be open with your kiddo. But if they're really hesitant, that's okay. And maybe it'll take a little bit of tweaking. Um, but essentially, it would be really great if they were on the same page. Um, that's a hard situation to be in, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we just had one more question when you were sharing about um, wonders and worries and just the resources you have. Do y'all have local groups that kids can join? I guess is
Right,
that information on your website, or how can people access that info?
right. That's a really good question. So we do individual support. So we see kids at all of our offices. We have one in North Austin. I'm out of the West Bank office, one in Georgetown, and on the east side. And we have a Wonders and Worries in the Bereavement Center of San Antonio. So we have individual sessions, and we usually encourage families to do that if it's feasible. We have 6-week groups that start every quarter. So that information is typically on our website. And then after kiddos and teens go through our curriculum, we always have a monthly check-in group. We have a school age check-in group and a school age bereavement group. And then we have a monthly teen group. So kids can join that, but they have to go through our curriculum first in order to visit and to be a member of one of those groups.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, those were the questions that we had received. Thank you again for
Awesome.
just taking time with us today. This was so great.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks guys for listening. And if you're in the helping profession, I hope that this was beneficial for y'all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, well, just to wrap up, I encourage you all just to stay connected with the Texas Oncology Foundation. You can visit our website or like us on Facebook. Just a reminder, this presentation was recorded, and so it will be posted tomorrow. All who registered for this webinar will receive the presentation in a follow-up email, and then you can also visit our Texas Oncology website, and it is under our Survive and Thrive webinar tab on the foundation website. So it will be posted there in case you missed some of it. You can always catch up there. And then just some upcoming events that the foundation has. We have our Survive and Thrive Symposium in Arlington on Saturday, September 29th. And we also are offering a pre-conference workshop also in Arlington on September 28th. And we'll be focusing on blood and bone marrow transplant patients. We'll also be in Beaumont on November 3rd with our symposium as well. And of course, continue to stay connected with us for these webinars. We will be back on October 11th with Jackie Castillo from Cancer Support Texas, and we'll be focusing on finances. Lastly, as we bring this webinar to a close, a survey will open on your screen. Please just take a moment and provide us with your feedback from today's presentation, as well as giving us topic ideas that you would like to see covered in future webinars. Again, we are so thankful, Corinne, that you joined us, and we're thankful for everyone that tuned in tonight. So have a great evening.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.